Okay, here's just a quick video for parts 3 and 4, just a couple of pointers for doing that. And some of you may have already completed that and got it down, but just to help if there's any questions on this part. Um, so this one, of course, part 3 is just dissolving sugar in water. So we're going to take just tap water, and notice to point out as we get further on, so I put about, this is a little too much. We're not really measuring precisely. The lines on the beaker are not used for precise measurements. If we can say, oh, add about 30 milliliters, then you can use these lines. But anything that requires any accuracy, we're going to use graduated cylinders. These are much more accurate. Beakers are just for estimating volume. So you put a little bit of water in there, and then the other thing I put in, fold a piece of paper. Even in an engineering lab, so you say, well, this is kind of a crude way to hold a solid, but even in the engineering lab, we would use this for some substances. You just fold it like this, and then fold it again this way, and it kind of makes a little tray. I'm going to be just not very precise. One of the reasons, of course, obviously you know what happens when you add sugar to water, so why are we doing this lab? Part of it is to practice our representations of what's going on, our lab skills, thinking about what we're doing with the lab, and then what is actually happening at the particle level, and can I represent that with a particle model. So let's take, so now I'm going to weigh the stir rod and explain the reasons for that. So I weigh all of this together, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing on the video, and I find the mass. So I'm weighing the stir rod for a reason, and part 1 of the lab where you're breaking up the steel wool, and you say, well, there should be no change of mass, and if you lost some mass, you could maybe account for why you did. We'll talk about that. You get your mass, and then what am I going to do? I'm going to take this sugar that's in this thing, a little hard to see, and I'm going to magically make this sugar disappear. And stir away, and lo and behold, after some stirring, the sugar's gone. It's vanished. But of course, we know it's still there. You could taste the water. I don't know, depending on how clean your beaker is. And you know that sugar is actually still there. We just can't see it because these things are incredibly small. Now, the reason I had you weigh the stir rod is because the stir rod has some droplets on it. If I did not, if I had just done this, stirred, and had not weighed the stir rod before or after, I would have lost some mass, the mass of the water on this. And so we want to be sensitive enough with our scale measurements that we could say, oops, I think we lost some water in this process, or we lost some sugar particles or something. And of course, if you don't put the paper back on the scale, you're going to have a huge change in mass, the mass of the paper that's not there. So all of this just kind of confirming our lab procedures, and then you'll get the mass afterwards. What happened, and we'll work with a particle model on that. Part 4, if I dump this one out, give it a quick rinse, add some water, and now the paper in the Alka-Seltzer is just because the crumbles, I'm just using a half tablet, is just in case some crumbles of Alka-Seltzer, and now we're really trying to keep track of this and be accurate with our lab procedure. If some crumbs of Alka-Seltzer came off, I will be able to keep them on the paper. Otherwise, if I just drop the Alka-Seltzer tablet on the tray without the paper, then some crumbs would come off, and I would see a change in mass if I was sensitive enough with my stuff. This little round glass called a watch glass, I'm going to weigh this too. And you get your mass. Bring it out, be as precise as possible. We're kind of working on precision, maybe not. Okay, I'm not going to go through those steps on the video, or just make sure, get your accurate mass. So get your accurate mass reading of this beginning point. Then I take the Alka-Seltzer, drop it in, make sure I get all the crumbs in. This I'm going to stay here. The purpose of the watch glass is as this is dissolving, the bubbles are forming, little splatters come out. That, of course, is mass leaving my system. I want to not allow that, and so I put the watch glass on just to catch the spatters. When all the bubbling is done, then I'm going to get my mass after. So one of the things that, and I mentioned it in the last video, the difference between, so in science, this marker is not very good. In science, it is a giant mistake in science to go into an experiment saying, well, I don't think there's going to be any change of mass, so I don't see anything, zero. That's really not how we're going to do this. Let's look at it. My hypothesis might be, I don't think there's going to be a change in mass. And so maybe on the sugar one, say, well, the sugar's still there. There should be no change of mass. The change of mass is zero. If you really found that it was 0 point exactly to 100th, then you would say, we had no change in mass. It was 0.00 grams was my change in mass. That is a difference, and it's something that we'll get into. So that will be the lab, okay? And then you check this, and once it's all bubbling, what happened to your mass? If you had a change in mass, what happened? What is that change in mass? Okay. And then I will post some questions as part of it. So this is an assignment. It's technically due at the end of the day, Friday, but really as long as you know what's going on with it and you answer it by Monday morning, Monday is when we will start the small group discussions as a practice. The other thing I will post is a PDF as part of this assignment. This one, so the lab is a group assignment, and you'll do as a group. This PDF assignment, which is Fundamentals of Experimental Design, you can do that individually or as a group. I don't have it in some way where you can actually, do this on your computer, so you can turn it in either right on if you have a way of printing, print this thing out, and then write on it, take pictures and submit the pictures, or you can write, or you can just say, okay, question 1 and do it on a separate Google document. So questions, see me in the office hours. I'll have office hours this week, and then Monday is when we get started. I'll have a schedule for next week printed. Monday is when we're going to start to really pick things up a little bit. These first 2 days, Thursday, Friday, really, let's get our group dynamics going. Let's get these labs done. So how are we going to handle labs? How are we going to do this? And kind of get a feel for how that can work. And then we'll start to really get going next week. So I'll put some assignments on Google Classroom, and that's it for today.